All right. Good morning and welcome to Haventree Parent Podcast, where we get a chance to talk about something that's important to us and to you and, before the kids wake up.
Hopefully, right? Today, we are going to be talking about bedtime routines. Kind of fitting because we started off this series talking about co-sleeping and bed sharing. And we're going to be finishing it just kind of taking a look around the world at what different countries and cultures do to get their kids ready for bed, as well as talking about bedtimes, which for some people can be as late as 11 o'clock for their young, like preschool kids, which I find bananas because I can't stay up that late.
So like you said, we're going to talk about different cultures and their take on the bedtime routine, which for most of the part, I think was pretty standard as far as what most countries were doing as far as I had a quote that I wanted to read from one of the articles that I researched that just said, there is a precious moment for families around the globe when twilight falls, children yawn, and bedtime routines begin. And I thought that was a pretty cool quote. I just like the way it was presented.
I think it's adorable. I do think it's maybe a little bit like
cheesy. Yeah, for sure.
Cheesy and like sort of fluffified maybe because like
everybody doesn't like bedtime.
Yeah, usually like for me bedtime is like thank God it's bedtime. Put those kids away. Obviously not because I love the kids and I love snuggling with them and things like that. But I don't know if that is like
a good quote.
If that quote is my normal response to bedtime.
That's funny.
I feel that way about morning, but I'm a morning person. Like by evening, I'm done for the day. So that could be part of it.
I don't know if we're just always inside before twilight or whatever, but yesterday Jay looked out the window and was like, Dad, look, this side pink, that side orange. Why is the sky colors going crazy? So I was like, it's called twilight.
Yeah.
That's what happens. It looks pink and orange and purple and all those colors before it sets. So,
right.
She was like fascinated. What? What? My favorite.
Yeah, that's funny.
So, but I mean, like I said, I don't know if that's because we're usually inside eating dinner or what at that time.
Yeah, so. I think that is part of it. We kind of are an early to bed, early to rise family. Now, that's mostly determined by me.
Sure.
Especially right now because you're working in the evenings, typically. Well, he's still on his weird schedule, in case you were wondering at the moment. But typically, you've been working in the evenings. So because I'm shot, like my nerves are shot, I'm done. I've given all I can give by like dinner time. After dinner, like, I don't know, guys, you're on your own. Not quite, but I feel like that most of the time.
Yeah, it's
and so we're usually not outside. Like they may be playing or reading a book like in the living room, watching a movie, we'll like snuggle and read sometimes, but
right. Yeah. Evening time is ready to like get quiet and, just build up to bedtime.
Our sort of, our bedtime routine kind of starts after dinner usually. Yeah. Like once we eat dinner, we kind of like start going through the motions of like picking up the toys and like doing kind of quieter things and stuff like that. So, that's, but so like we kind of said, there was some huge differences, across the countries as far as like even when bedtime is, with like Australia and the United States and New Zealand kind of being some of the earliest bedtimes of like between 6 and 7 even, which 6 is a little early. For us at our house, bedtime is between 8 and 9, pretty much across the board for all of our kids.
Yeah.
But then that got extremely late, both in, I wish I had printed out the map that I had looked at, but there's like maybe some of the East Asian countries had a much later bedtime. I think like Japan and Hong Kong were kind of listed, as well as most notably and most talked about that I found was Spain and Portugal. One author said, when I was reading one of the articles, she said she was shocked when her friend invited her to go to a preschool performance for a local festival that started at 11. Yeah. Which is like
that way the kids are in bed by midnight. Perfect.
Right. Yeah. No, but again, part of that's, I like 8 o'clock is my bedtime, if I was happy and, just did whatever I want every day, and nobody relied on me or needed me for anything, I would be in bed by like 8 to 9 o'clock,
Sure.
So I, like keeping our kids up till 11 is baffling to me, but I thought it was really cool. So
Well, I know we have a few that can make it to 11. So,
easily. Yeah.
I'm usually the one up with them, like, go back to bed, stop
Yeah.
coming out,
Yeah.
stop needing whatever. So,
But in Spain, they cited that the reason that they keep their kids up so late is because they value socialization. And so the Spanish culture, a lot of families feel that a lot of that socialization time and time to like spend with neighbors and family is in the evening hours, which makes sense, especially if you're sending your kid to school during the day.
mm-hmm.
And so they really value having that social time together in the evening, which I think is really cool that's, sort of their...
Well, and I think you see that in their culture when,
Right.
you, I don't know, read stuff about that or see a movie about that sort of thing. So,
Yeah. But so I mean, it varies across the board significantly.
mm-hmm.
When you look at like the spectrum of like 6 to 11 or midnight, I find it, I don't know. I guess I just didn't expect such a wide variety, to be sort of the cultural norm, because I know people on both ends of that spectrum. I can think of one friend in particular who bedtime is, like 7-ish usually. And I can think of another friend who is very much a night owl and jokes about it often. And their kids stay up much later than ours do. But that's not an issue,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something that I find interesting because, it just is so different, but then the friend that their kids go to bed early, she's up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, like crazy early. The daughter's up at like 6, I think. But, so she gets up extremely early anyway to start her day. And then her daughter's up earlier than ours are, usually. So, so like really, it makes sense that between families, there's going to be difference in sort of that bedtime routine based on sort of the natural rhythm for that family. But it is interesting to see that kind of like, there's a very wide variety in what's considered normal
Mm-hmm.
around the world. So I don't know. It was just fascinating to me to kind of look at that variation, I guess.
Yeah, one of the big differences I remember reading, because like some people like they follow the 3-step method where it's like you do a bath, you do like a playtime or like a quiet time, and just like start to settle, and then like a book or story and
Mm-hmm.
music or something like that. Just soft music, not like rock and roll or something fun and exciting.
I mean,
pop music, jazz, all the good stuff. And one of the fascinating things was, I think, in the difference of that from the 3-step method routine was that. Like the U.S. and the U.K., there were like 60 to 80% of the bedtime routines involved like the bath time, and in India and Indonesia or other Eastern cultures or whatever, baths are in the morning, so they
Right,
didn't have a bath
right.
time part of routine for bedtime. So, which was, I mean, you're still getting a bath eventually, but
Right.
it just was a difference in their thought process as
Yeah.
far as like when do you get a bath, in the morning or afternoon.
So one of the things that it was talking about is that most places around the world include some kind of hygiene during their bedtime routine, whether that's a bath or even just like brushing teeth, physical affection of some variety, talking, singing, praying, and story time. So all of those are things that are common to find around the world in the bedtime routine in one form or another. One thing that a couple places talked about that I thought was really interesting was tea. So in Russia and the UK, I think in particular of the places that I just happened to find, they talked about like the fact that it's very common to have like chamomile tea or something of that nature at bedtime to kind of help, I don't know, sort of relax the body. And I mean, it's kind of the same idea as like, little ones have like a warm cup of milk sometimes. And that's kind of how we transition from like breastfeeding and nursing in a bottle at night to like weaning them off the bottle, but they still get like a warm glass of milk at nap time and bedtime, and then eventually it's a cold glass of milk. But which Obi for some reason hasn't made that transition as quickly as the other kids, but that's because he's spoiled, I guess. I don't know. We thought he was going to be the last one, so
Yeah.
we were just kind of pushing off the, you know, moving him up in the world as far as in his habits. But
we'll be making an eviction video for him here soon. So
nah,
kick him out. I want the crib.
Thankfully, we have 2 cribs, so that worked out in our benefit.
Yeah.
So yeah, a warm like glass of tea in the evening is part of some bedtime routines, and giving some sort of food is something that you find almost universally, food or milk, almost universally for like infants to toddlers. That's pretty universal as part of the bedtime routine, which makes sense because you would nurse them before you put them to bed typically if they were an infant. And so that's kind of something that as they grow is still part of that evening routine for a long time. We now, we'll let the kids have a glass of water sometimes before bed. And that we try to discourage because then we have bedwetting. But
right. It's sort of like we don't want them to be thirsty and come out for
right.
water, but you also don't want to load them up and send them to bed. Here you go.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna wake up to wet sheets and changing beds and doing more laundry, and you want to avoid all that extra.
But I can't do dairy at bedtime. Like when I have ice cream before bed, I don't know. Josh has got a serious sweet tooth, so he's always like, I'll go get some treats before bedtime,
Mm-hmm.
And if I have ice cream before bed, I often throw up or my stomach is very angry. So I don't know, dairy during the day doesn't bother me at all, but at nighttime, oof, not good. It is not happy. So I've been kind of once the kids sort of get past infancy and toddler having milk at bedtime, I don't encourage it anymore just because to me the idea of milk at bedtime is I don't know, it really disturbs me, but that's because of my own body being weird, I guess.
See, it's supposed to I don't know, sit in your stomach and help you go to sleep.
Yeah, and be soothing.
Be harder to process than
it's
water.
It's not soothing for me. It's too difficult
it takes longer to process, so you're not hungry.
It's too hard for my stomach to process at bedtime.
You don't wake up starving. Is that the idea?
At
least I think that's the idea. If I'm wrong, please
idea.
put a comment. Do not drink milk at night. So I don't know.
I don't know. So, but there's definitely, a lot of variation in that. I think I'm going to sneeze.
Oh, gotcha.
So prayer, you talked about as being something that, we haven't talked about that yet, have we?
Well,
I mentioned it, I guess.
You sort of mentioned it, yeah.
Is something that some cultures include as part of bedtime. That was kind of an interesting one to sort of see what different countries did, though. In predominantly Muslim countries, a lot of articles talked about the fact that bedtime is sort of determined by the evening sunset prayers, and so because they have a very routine set up already in place as far as when prayer occurs, the bedtime kind of follows and falls into sort of that practice already. And so that sort of is the determination for when bedtime occurs in some of those countries, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then some other countries, I think the Philippines and Indonesia, both a very large majority of families and parents include prayer as part of the bedtime routine. But then, there's a lot of countries that don't even mention it as something that comes up frequently enough for parents to even think about. So,
right. I think I saw Australia or New Zealand or whatever had 6%, part of that routine or whatever. So, which doesn't mean it's not having any other time of the day, but it's just not part of the routine. So,
right, not part of the bedtime routine.
At least according to that study, however many people were a part of that. So.
Which I would say, if you include prayer as part of your bedtime routine, you have a greater chance of really making kids that pray really well and have really long, eloquent prayers because they're putting off bedtime.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But it's really funny. Like, there have been a couple times where I wanted to video the girls and their prayers at night because it just is like, I don't know.
They're dragging it out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's cute. It's sweet. And it's, sincere. And a lot of it is stuff that they'll, like, emulate, of course, like
That's
things
funny.
that they've heard.
Yeah.
But it is so funny sometimes because it's like, before we eat, it's like, thank you for the food. Thank you for all the people in the world. Amen. Like,
give me this food.
And at bedtime, it's like, thank you for the grass. Thank you for the trees. Thank you for the animals. Yeah. Thank you for daddy. He's a hard worker and he plays with us. And it just is like, okay,
Yeah.
So, but it
we
just
gotta wrap this up sometime.
but it makes me laugh. It's always just like, whatever.
Right.
But I guess if, they want to pray all night instead of sleep, more power to them.
Well, they
maybe?
probably know the same thing that I know. That sometimes, like, we'll pillow talk and I'll say a prayer or whatever about whatever thing's going on, and then she'll be out. Like, she'll just fall asleep in the middle of my prayer. I'm like, you fell asleep? I was praying.
I know.
Like,
if I can't sleep at night, Josh is like, how about I pray? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's like, dear
Fine.
God. And I'm like,
I don't know if it's that quick, but
it's pretty quick. Let's be honest. I always say it's because he just has a very soothing, quiet voice at night. But it just is because, like, I don't know. Like, my brain is active, and then once I'm listening to somebody else talk, my brain shuts down to listen, and I'm like, okay, now I
because
can
usually
sleep.
we just put on YouTube and we're like, all right, Philip DeFranco or
Phil
whoever,
DeFranco,
Slow-Mo guys or whoever
Jolly,
else. So,
Jolly, slow-mo guys.
It's a
That's
variety. Which one is it this week? So
I can't listen to Philip DeFranco at nighttime though. That's just not. It's too much.
yeah, that's true. You want to pay attention.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't know.
It's all right.
So we can talk about kind of some of the specific countries if you want to go that direction.
I think we mentioned several already. I don't know if any other ones stood out really. I think there was one thing that stood out was France said they do like some sort of I don't even know what the wording was that I put in here. Pause for a beat kind of method where they pause and make sure that the cry that they're hearing in their baby's room or parents' room is like an actual cry and not just a tired cry.
Yeah, or
before
like,
they like
I
go
rolled
in
over
and
or I farted and woke myself up for a second.
But like the article that I read was like France is really solid on their method of whatever they have come up with, and that's how they say they pause for the beat, and then they decide if they're going to go in there or not to help help the infant go back to sleep or settle or whatever. So because a lot of that, and we'll get into this next. The benefits of having a routine is, you want to build you want them to understand that they're going to bed.
Right.
And so it's training their bodies to recognize that cue that they're tired.
Well, and France also is one that I found they kind of emphasize learning to connect to their natural sleep cycles. And so there's some practicing of like, listening to your body and sort of, and actually it's kind of interesting because it is sort of like what we do now with our kids where like you put them to bed or to like it's quiet time, it's bedtime, but like we allow our kids, if you want to read a book, you like go for it, go crazy. You want to read a book till midnight, have at it. But 8 to 9 o'clock is when you go to your room and lights off or mostly off. And so they encourage kids learning and listening to that that need for sleep and when that presents. But then at the same time, France is one of the countries that I found they talked about starting sleep training basically from the first day that they bring the baby home from the hospital, which I thought was kind of interesting that like there are elephants above us. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but it sounds like our children are awake.
That's what we get for making a studio space.
In the basement, yeah. So, it's interesting that like there's that encouragement or focus on kids listening to their bodies as far as they need sleep, but then also doing sleep training at the same time. So I just was like, that's kind of an interesting two sides of the coin, I guess.
Right. And I guess there was one other thing that I did want to mention was I guess Australia actually has a program, a government-funded program for like, they call it a sleep camp, and it's connected to the hospitals or the child hospitals, and it's like a 5 to 6 day class of like learning how to put your kid to sleep on a routine, or just different methods for like what, because the other thing we'll talk about later is each kid, the sleep cycle or sleep need is different. So
Right.
I can go off of 5 to 6 hours of sleep,
It makes me so angry.
and
I wish I could do that.
Katie needs like
if I
8
don't
hours,
have 8
so,
hours,
yeah.
I'm a monster.
Right.
And I wish that I could do like 5 or 6 hours.
And so each of your kids is going to be different too.
Right.
Like one of them is going to need, the 5 to 6 hours, and the other one's going to need the 8 hours, or they're not going to pay attention. They're just going to be, a mess. And you want to make sure you're getting those needs met,
Well, it's a very interesting thing too, because to have a government program that's focused on helping parents get their kids to sleep probably makes for a much more productive society, because how much lost sleep do you have the first few years of having a new baby? I mean, it's like...
Yeah. And they said that their average was like 9.5 hours of sleep for their kids.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, and so then I thought it was interesting in Egypt, they on average only sleep 6 hours a night, but they take a 2-hour nap every day, which like...
Same for Spain.
Yeah, I could totally be down for that, except that like... If I took a 2-hour nap most days, I would be really grouchy. And I think I would still need the 8 hours at night. So I don't know that my body... I think I would just take advantage of the extra sleep. But I thought that was really cool.
Oh, goodness. We're going to keep talking about countries because we have a whole list. I mean, there's 156 of them to talk about. So we can't really stop ourselves when we start researching. We're like, oh, yeah, this one, this one, this one.
I thought were really cool.
I know. We can't mention all of them. So.
I know.
But I'm going to mention one last more.
You're going to do the last one? What if I find one that I like better?
Then maybe we'll both get one more.
I don't know. Go ahead.
I'll do mine. Botswana. They have like, we talked about co-sleeping already, and theirs was like basically if you're tired, you take a nap, you go to sleep, whatever.
Right.
So like their kids aren't really on routine. It's just like if you're tired, you're sleeping, and you're usually with a sibling or whatever. And it said like in the dark of night, they'd be like, I don't know how they do it. It didn't really explain. It just said like there's social. They pile together like and sleep together or something, like co-sleeping like we talked about already, for like the feeling of safety, which makes sense because I think that's
but
what
for
most
context,
kids
they're
want to do
talking
last
about
time,
sort of a like hunter-gatherer type tribe in Botswana.
Right, yeah.
So it sort of
I think
is
it's
like
the Aki tribe or something.
Determined by the group dynamics of like whether it's the middle of day or the middle of night, when the group is tired, whether they've just had a long hunt or whatever. They sleep. Like it's not dependent on, the cycle of the sun or day and night time or things like that. So, cause I imagine like there are times that it might be better to be awake during the night if there's a lot of predators around. I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't,
I don't know.
But you're right. The article that I found didn't talk a lot about it either, but it was kind of an interesting.
It was just like, let's do this. I'm like, okay, I don't know how that works, but sure.
Okay, so even though, as you mentioned, we could talk about a lot of different countries, let's kind of talk about some of the benefits of a sleep routine.
Sounds great.
Because obviously, a sleep routine is important. Oh, excuse me. I don't know what's going on today.
Okay.
A sleep routine is great. It helps parents. Obviously, it's important enough for Australia to put like government funds into making it something that's available to parents. So developing a sleep routine is really important. It helps kids sleep better, help them fall asleep faster, helps them stay asleep longer. And it helps parents to kind of navigate and just sort of support them as they're getting their kids ready for bed. But it creates a routine that I think is important for all humans, small and big. We like routine. We thrive with some type of routine. And so providing that routine for kids as early as you possibly can kind of helps them to know, like, okay, we do these things, and that means it's time to start being quiet, getting ready for bed, whatever.
Right, yeah. And I think there's a double-sidedness to that training, because like sometimes the kids want to like listen to the body and sleep when you don't want them to just be sleeping. You're like, I'd rather they get a good night's sleep tonight and not have this nap right now in the car, or whatever else is the reason they're sleeping.
Right.
So sometimes you don't want them to be asleep, and you're like, we should wake up. I mean, when it's an infant, sure, yeah, I would probably never wake up an infant, but
pretty much. Never wake a sleeping baby.
Unless you're really trying to do major sleep training or working on a different thing. So, as needed or kind of thing. Which
we've never really been a fan of like some of the strict-ish sleep training methods. Mm-hmm. But I also would not.
The herd moved.
I know.
Goodness.
like the ceiling's going to come down on us. I don't understand what's happening.
It's because we're right under the stairs.
Yeah,
So.
I know, but
we're in a
still.
little closet under the stairs. No, I'm just kidding.
It's not a closet. It's just like a weird corner. Now you've distracted me. Oh, so I'm not a big fan of sleep training, really strict sleep training things. But I do think that there's a lot of value in that. You know, there are some kids that just do not sleep, and parents go years without sleep. And people need sleep. Like humans need sleep. We were made to sleep. Sleep is necessary. And without sleep, your health, is garbage. You can be more susceptible to getting sick all the time. You're much more susceptible to stress and put you in danger, like just driving to work if you're tired.
Right.
Sleep is really important, And so I do think that sleep training is totally necessary for some families to get their kids to go to sleep. Like I said, it's not something we've ever used. It's not something... It would not be what I would recommend to be anybody's starting point necessarily. But I would say if you're going on like 2 or 3 years without sleep, you can't live like that.
Yeah.
And kids need that routine. And you need to be able to sleep as a parent. Sometimes
you need that 9.5 hours.
Well, I mean, you need like at least 6,
Right.
But I do think that that's important to kind of just say, like, because some people, like, there's lots of arguments about like, oh, gentle sleep training versus like cry it out versus, whatever else.
Right.
And there's a lot of heat surrounding that topic depending on, which side you fall on.
Apparently our guys got a good night's sleep last night. They're all stomping down the stairs. So
I'm not ready to start the day, I guess. I don't know. I need to go back to sleep. So, another benefit of the bedtime routine, though, is just kind of managing sleep problems and bedtime struggles. Some kids have like night terrors, different things like that. And so that routine can kind of help calm them when they're having a lot of anxiety about going to sleep. Cy went through that for a long time when he was little, where he had terrible night terrors at night, and he didn't want to go to sleep, because he always woke up screaming bloody murder. And that was really hard, for him. And so, having that routine, kind of providing that, sort of safety blanket almost of like, this is what we do. This is, what to expect, is reassuring, especially for a little one.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's important. I don't know
what's happening.
Throw some kids out the window.
We can pause and do a part 2 if you want.
Well, what did you have anything else you wanted to add? Because I am like,
you're done.
I'm over it with these wild people. Folks, send help this morning. I am going to lose it today.
Oh,
this is not a good start to the morning. This is a really bad sign is what this is. Send all the coffee, please.
Oh, man.
I'm accepting coffee donations.
I had probably
please drop it on the porch.
I had like 5 beneficial things that I was going to say.
Okay.
1, if you have reading or like, time of quiet time where you're reading a book to the kids or whatever, it helps. It also benefits not only in their sleeping, but like just literacy, understanding and like seeing like words to a picture and knowing that, you're reading something coming from that. So,
yeah,
and eventually, like once they are able to read, then they can help out with that and, help tell themselves the story.
And reading at bedtime is much better than screen time at bedtime. Like,
right.
And there are definitely times that's like, okay, let's watch a movie and go to bed. But really, screen time is not ideal for bedtime.
Yeah. The whole blue light thing.
Yeah, reading is a much better option for quiet time.
Right, but also that gives you, good timing for, improving their speech, because then they're talking or you're talking and they're understanding that as well. It also creates a bonding time because you're bonding with them to put them to bed.
Snuggle them and read to them.
Right. You're also teaching them self-care. Sorry, I keep looking down.
That's all right.
I wish I just had
it all. You don't have it all memorized?
I know. I wish I had it all memorized. I just need to put it up here and then I'll be good.
Teleprompter.
Right. That's what I need.
Nah.
So the other thing was, it was like... Don't laugh at me. I need a teleprompter. Need it. I need the like clear one that I can look through it. Was with speech. Or I already said that one, didn't I? Darn it. Now I messed up because she's laughing at me. I feel judged. All right.
Judged.
So yeah, self-care was part of that because you're
Yeah.
teaching them, one, to pay attention to their body language as far as like feeling tired, and as well as like if you do a bath time routine or any sort of like cleanup before we go to bed,
Yeah.
changing into pajamas and stuff like that. You're teaching them to take care of themselves. The last 3 benefits were it also is good for their growth hormone because babies grow when they're sleeping. Probably most kids sleep until their growth hormones are done growing. I don't know when that stops.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Your growth plates. When do your growth plates stop growing your body?
When you're big.
When you're big.
It's
Perfect.
not like they only grow at bedtime.
That's what it said. You grow more when you're sleeping. It said you might pick up your baby out of their bed and you'll be like, wow, you got bigger because they actually did. So that's what it said. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
The last 2 things were, and I don't know if I can read my own chicken scratch. That's what it says. Restore brain nutrients.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
is true.
And the last one, this was
sleep's
the
good
most
for your
exciting
brain.
one I wanted to talk about, was it also improves their mental ability for memorization because it's allowing them to process what they've learned for the day. So
Yeah, that is true.
There's those days where we've had our kids
Yeah.
where like they've had overexposure and like they're crashed out on the way home or
Right.
going whatever. I mean, usually it's like Christmas or a birthday party or some event where you've gone to and they've had so much building into their
Yeah.
little brains that day that they're super tired because they're of all the mental activity.
So that is a really good point, and that's cool. And probably something we'll talk about for our next series when we're talking about schooling and homeschooling. But there is research that talks about the fact that when you sleep, your brain is converting some stuff from short-term to long-term memory, and then also sort of wiping the slate clean for the next day. Which is one of the reasons that sleep is so important, is because it's really sort of restoring your brain capacity. Which is probably why I need so much sleep, because my brain capacity feels like it's shot most of the time.
All right, I think that's it for us today. We're going to go see what the next adventure is for us upstairs,
The elephants are awake.
and we'll talk about it next week on the next adventure. Bye.
Bye.